Most people thought that Logan Paul was wrong for how he treated George about his faith. But Andrew Shultz doesn't think that it was Logan's fault and believes that the real problem was actually fundamentalist Christians. But what most people found shocking about this was how he justified his conclusion. Here's how it started.
The tricky thing with pissing off religious folks is that there's nothing you could say if you believe the things you said, right? So it's like, if you go, I disagree with these things about your religion, and that's what is offensive to those people, you either have to go, actually, I agree with them, or you go, I'm sorry that you don't like the way I feel about you.
Yeah.
It's not gonna necessarily make them feel better. Maybe there's a more tactful way to go through it. I think that, like, fundamentally, there's some disagreements that he has with Christianity.
Now, although Andrew seems to mean well, he seems to be completely misreading the situation. As stated repeatedly in the comments to his video, the issue wasn't that there was a disagreement. It was all about how he treated George for his beliefs, saying that George needed therapy since he believed in Jesus, and that he needed to level up since Jesus wasn't doing it for him, and so on. So it was the gaslighting and the mocking of George for his faith that made Logan's fans so furious. But it's what Andrew and his co-host said next that led a lot of people to believe that they were unjustifiably going soft on Logan in order to further their career. Listen to how Andrew and his co-host interpreted the situation.
I thought he was more trying to fuck with George as like a troll, like a friend, like when you troll your friends.
Yeah.
And it just came out way harsher than he wanted. It was my personal reading of the situation.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
Wait, are you talking about the apology or are you talking about when he
The
dissed
initial
the
video.
religion?
He's talking about the initial video.
Yeah, I think the initial video
Oh,
was
I
a clip.
don't think that he realized it came off like that.
Oh,
I think it was like they just let one slip.
Okay, so they interpreted Logan's statements as just jokingly messing with a friend. But the only problem is Logan seemed visibly angry and didn't seem to be joking at all, which is what made the entire thing so awkward. Even Penguin Zero, one of YouTube's biggest creators, who even said that he's not religious, pointed this out.
I don't know what he was thinking. Like, regardless of your stance on religion, why confront your friend about it in such an aggressive, condescending way? You don't have to believe it, it's fine. I just don't see the point in shitting on the guy for it. But you can make jokes out of it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I make plenty of jokes with my friends, like, on the podcast. Like, it's fine. It's never coming from a place of, like, hatred for it.
So it wasn't about disagreeing, it was all in how he did it. It came off as an unprovoked and an unnecessary attack on George and accusing George of being homophobic, even though George claimed that he clearly wasn't.
You always yell at me about gay people. I never once talk about gay people.
Because you're subscribed to the doctrine that perpetuates that information.
Keep bringing up that I
question.
bash gay people all the time. When have I ever done that?
Bro, that is a staple of your religion, and it's not bashing gay people. It's condemning them.
But have
for what
you,
they
as,
like.
for
That's
as Shanko, as your best friend?
ridiculous.
So I don't think that Andrew and the rest of the guys were right in thinking that Logan was just joking around. And perhaps the strangest part of their entire take is in what Andrew believes to be the real reason that Logan is getting pushback and who all of the pushback was coming from.
Also, I'm like, how many of his fans don't know this about him already? It's not like he just came out for the first time saying that he's not religious.
Yeah, I don't think his diehard fans are like fundamentalist Christians.
Yeah, I think it's like they're fundamentalist Christians that found the clip on TikTok or Instagram and they're going, hey, this is really up. How dare you do this? So he's feeling like an onslaught and it feels like the whole world is saying how stupid and up he is. But the reality is it's a group of people who aren't even his core fan base. So it's like, I don't even think you need to apologize to them. I feel like Logan has been very transparent about who he is and what he believes. So there's nobody who's like a fundamentalist Christian, thinks that he's a Christian, then found out that day that he's not.
So first off, I actually do agree with Andrew on one of the first things that he said. Logan has been open about his views on this subject for a long time. But where Andrew seems to be clearly wrong is in thinking that the pushback is only coming from Christian fundamentalists and not Logan's fans. As I showed in a previous video on the subject, you can just go for yourself and look at the comments on Logan's video and see who they're coming from. I'd say that most of the negative comments weren't coming from Christians at all, and were in fact all coming from his fans more than anyone else. And when you really think about it, it doesn't even really makes sense to think that all of this hate is primarily coming from fundamentalist Christians. It's not as if there's this giant army of fundamentalist Christians online that would be shocked or offended to find out that Logan Paul isn't a Christian. I'm sure they probably already assumed that much. So Andrew's explanation doesn't seem to make that much sense. Now, I'm not saying that this is what Andrew is doing, but labeling those who called out Logan as a fundamentalist Christian could be seen as a rhetorical way to dismiss the complaints against Logan as only coming from unreasonable and and irrational people, which obviously isn't the case. But even if we were to grant that and say that it was only fundamentalist Christians that called Logan out for how he treated George, that still doesn't make the criticism any less valid. And on top of it, if being a fundamentalist means being committed to the fundamentals of a belief system, that isn't always a bad thing. Of course, whether or not it's a good or a bad thing entirely depends on what those fundamentals are. So when Andrew talks about fundamentalist Christians, on Christianity, one of the fundamentals is radically loving other people. And the best example of a fundamentalist Christian would be Jesus, because I don't know how you get more fundamental and more radical to your beliefs than a man praying for his enemies as they were in the process of killing them. That type of radical love is actually a good thing to be a fundamentalist about. The only problem comes in when people are fundamental to the wrong things. And so the next time you hear people complaining about fundamentalist Christians doing things that they really had nothing to do with, what are you gonna say? What do you mean